All right. I'm Betsy Cunningham, and this is Southern Oregon Progressive Podcast. And my co-host, Kevin Bell, isn't going to be here today, um, but we are going to talk with Stephanie Hunter from the Rural Organizing Project, and it's kind of a continuation of where we started last week regarding ICE and ICE consideration of office space or looking for potential uh, folks who can provide office space is what they're saying it is. The request for interest, the request of interest that the ICE sent out or the administrative agency over them to see if they could find it. We discussed last week about the proposal having 300 people that they're supposed to be able to manage. And I just want to give a little bit of update of what's happening. I reached out to Stephanie because I thought it'd be great to kind of follow up on this because of the momentum we produced in pretty short time. A petition. It was actually right before the No Kings rally, the day before. We did that and created a couple of handouts that one was a short one, giving folks not only the opportunity to do the petition, but to connect with a group Resist that was formed last week under the Democratic Party was actually did it to facilitate something beyond what was happening with just the protests. But kind of it got some interest initially, but didn't have enough focus. So we kind of reached out, thought this might be an idea for people to galvanize and rally around. We have a change.org petition up on the No Ice in Douglas County, and it had 499 signatures, and it didn't get as much attention as the the paper sheet at No Kings because we're basically people were out there circulating that. And we have several hundred signatures. I haven't counted the last. I don't see that Ruth Smith is in the room, but Ruth Smith is the city councilor in Ward 4 in Roseburg, and she is one of the people that helped me kind of push this together really quickly. And she is wants to take this to the city council meeting in next Monday. So I'd really like to, see those petition signatures get to 1,000 on change.org. And we do have packets that if anybody's interested in with paper petitions and some information sheets, but the information sheets we did is like even a quarter sheet that has the QR code to that and the resistance group. So trying to get people, moving that forward. And it's not, the reality is what a city can do to stop it is probably nothing. What a city can do to express their position about it. I think that no matter how it is, I think that we should actually not only push the Roseburg City Council to take a position, because when they were asked, when the story was, put out about ICE interest here, they said because they don't have any jurisdiction, they weren't going to take a position on it. But that's really not good enough. I think we also should do it for the county commissioners and anybody else who lives in any of the other 11 incorporated cities in Douglas County might want to consider doing that too. So anyway, with all that just kind of background of where we are right now on this, and I think one of the things that Stephanie's going to particularly share, and I mentioned it last week that they have the information on the Sanctuary Promise Act and how it can be utilized by us. And I think there's some useful tools that we can put pressure on both of our, county and city government to address it. So Stephanie, I'll let you just do what you want.
Thanks. Yeah, I pulled together, like, would it be helpful just to like share what the Sanctuary Promise Act is, or is that already covered and folks are educated on that already?
Well, I don't know that everybody or anybody who might watch us on YouTube later is. So it would be helpful. Go ahead
Okay, great. Yeah, so in 2021, the Oregon legislature, so they passed a bill to strengthen Oregon's longstanding sanctuary laws. So this prohibits local law enforcement from engaging in or assisting with federal immigration enforcement, or ICE. The new law in 2021, called the Sanctuary Promise Act, clarifies the 1987 sanctuary policy, It added new requirements and limits on law enforcement. So, what the Sanctuary Promise Act does, it clarifies the rules separating local law enforcement from federal immigration enforcement. It applies to all public bodies and law enforcement agencies in Oregon, including county sheriffs, municipal police departments established by a university, the Oregon State Police, and corrections officers. So things that the act prohibits are investigating or interrogating people or otherwise collaborating with federal authorities for immigration purposes, requesting, storing, or sharing information about country of birth, immigration, or citizenship status, detecting and taking people into custody for immigration enforcement, notifying immigration officials of people in local custody who police believe are violating federal immigration law, giving immigration officials access to people law enforcement is detaining in restricted areas of local jails, denying services, benefits, or privileges to a person in jail or on probation or parole because of immigration status, jails contracting with immigration authorities, immigration officials arresting someone on their way to or from a court or while at court without a warrant from a judge. And there's other, but those are like the main pieces of the Sanctuary Promise Act. And that is, I can if it's helpful, I can put links in the chat or send stuff in an email if folks want some info on that. So I'm pulled this from a Sanctuary Promise Act explainer that was who put this together? I'm not sure. So that's what the Sanctuary Promise Act does. And then so this has been ROP had done a look at which counties were in compliance and out of compliance. And so at least a few years ago, Douglas County was out of compliance on their Sanctuary Promise Act policies. So I can't say that that's and maybe you all know. So I would be curious what you all have learned about county compliance with Sanctuary Promise Act. So that's a little bit about SPA and so I can go a little deeper, but I want to see if there's questions first.
I just want to clarify, all I know about Douglas County is what ROP has on there. And so that
Okay.
indicated that they were not. And I have not asked, but I certainly am more than willing to email both the Roseburg Police Department as well as the county sheriff to ask them if they're still using the same policies that they were. Because it looks
Excellent.
like what they're using is standardized policies from a
Mhm.
company, which happens often in
Yeah.
government legal, particularly government legal work, can policies, but those are out of date with the sanctuary promise. So we can certainly by next Monday, we hope to know about certainly the city of Roseburg as well as Douglas County.
Great. I just put the information about Sanctuary Promise Act from the ROP website and it shows the 2022-2023 info that we have, which shows that Douglas County is out of compliance. And then there's some um, kind of next steps in there about reaching out to law enforcement. So just I dropped that in the chat. And with Lexipol, which is that policy agency, I know I've talked to other folks around the state who have had questions about Lexipol, and it's like it, like any law enforcement, if they pull policies from Lexipol, they need to they're not going to be out of the box, have Oregon law in them. So you can't just pull it from Lexipol and be like, cool, we got a policy. Like you have to, it needs to be updated to include Oregon law.
Melissa, you had a question or statement?
Well, I guess kind of both. Last week we had the Oregon Attorney General here, and unfortunately I was ill that night and was not able to attend that meeting. But I did have a question, which was, we have a sheriff who has publicly stated that he is opposed to our state's Sanctuary Promise Act. Um, and we have many sheriffs, unfortunately, in our state who are opposed to our sanctuary laws. Um, and I think if ICE were to gain a foothold in Douglas County, it would not be a question of if, but when the Douglas County Sheriff's Office starts to cooperate with ICE, what would the Attorney General do about that? So that was my question that I wanted to ask the AG when he was here. I will say, in conversations that I've had with the Roseburg Police Chief last summer, he sort of made it clear. He said, even if I wanted to assist federal agents with immigration issues, I would not be allowed to. So that sort of reassured me a little bit that he at least knew that he at least knew the law and that he was going to follow it. I do not have that same faith in our sheriff. I feel like our sheriff absolutely hates this law and is looking for any opportunity to work with ICE, but that's just a personal observation.
And I just
Uh,
dropped the DOJ website around Sanctuary Promise in the chat. And so that in terms of like what the Attorney General Rayfield, how, he might have answered your questions would probably be included in here. But if so there's a community toolkit, there's a violation hotline. So there might be some resources in there that will help answer your questions there and also like maybe provide some more guidance on next steps.
Lori in the chat said that she actually contacted both the city and the sheriff, and she could elaborate. So, Lori, if you want to do that, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah, if you guys can hear me, I'm sorry, I'm not a very Zoom savvy person. So, I had emailed both the sheriff's department and the police department probably a month ago. The police department, within an hour, someone had responded to me with all the sanctuary city and sanctuary state rules, links to them, and was very open about expressing that they do follow those rules. Then the next day, I got another email from the police department from somebody else, essentially saying the same thing. So whether they do that or not, I don't know, but at least they know what the laws and the rules are. And it seems that their intention is to comply. At least that's what they're telling us. The sheriff's department, that was a whole nother kettle. Because I never got an answer. So I kept emailing and then I started calling, which they really appreciated. So then John Odell called me like 2 weeks after I sent the first email. Now, I never gave them my phone number. So he wanted me to know that he had my phone number. And he's like, well, the sheriff sent you an email. I said, I never got it. He goes, well, he sent it. I said, can he resend it? He goes, well, I don't know. I went, okay. So it was like a month and I kept emailing and I said, why don't we just kick it old school and you can just mail it to me or print it and I'll come pick it up. So they finally did email me something and it was actually just the email that he sent with it highlighted to let me know that they did send it. And, they were so non-specific. It was just, his primary responsibility is the safety of everyone who lives and visits our community. He says they don't ask about immigration status during routine contacts. He says public safety is not a political issue. It is a shared responsibility. My office will continue to uphold the law, respect constitutional rights, and work with our partners to keep our community safe. Nowhere did he say they plan to fully comply with the rules of the sanctuary city or state. So they're a little more iffy, I believe. So kind of going along with what you said, where I found the city to just be way more specific.
That's great info. Thanks for sharing that. And
Yeah, and if anyone's, I can, always share a copy of the letter and the emails. I saved the email and I saved this letter from the sheriff's department.
Well, I think it would be very, easy to verify whether they're policies, because I think in the tool that ROP put up, that it enumerates which policies are not in compliance. So, we could do a check of the policies. All that stuff is public records. And if you don't know about public records, a few weeks ago we did a show on public records and sunshine.
Okay.
So, I'm being funny. You don't have to watch the whole show. You could ask me if you want, if you have any questions, I'm more than willing to help anybody, try to navigate the system of trying to get access to that information. I think the one concern we have is there's a very different structure with the city police. They are actually employees of the city the city. They are not an elected, the sheriff is an elected sheriff, right? Yeah, he is not governed by the county commissioners, for example. I mean, they do cover his budget, but that's not the same thing. So the independent ability of the sheriff is much larger than the independence of the police chief, for example, here in Roseburg. So if the city council were to make it very clear, I think it would be easier for the sheriff to try to ignore, compliance with the Sanctuary Act with some kind of argument. But I think it's easy just to find out if the policies themselves in writing at least say the right thing, but that never really guarantees that they're doing the right thing, right?
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's where, I think just, Lori, you just reaching out and just being like, hey, I'm concerned about this. Folks just putting that attention on, hey, like we're paying attention, we're getting civically involved, we care about our neighbors. That sends that message. I think that's really important work. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, my pleasure. And that was my focus. I just wanted them to know, like, we're out here, we're watching.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am concerned, I'm from New Jersey originally, and then I lived in New Mexico for 10 years. So I had a lot of Black and brown neighbors and a lot of diversity and a wide variety of friends and family and people in my life. So it's always just so disheartening to me to see how ugly people can be, specifically here. It's been here for 16 years, still adjusting to it.
And you can request a community training on Sanctuary Promise Act on the DOJ website as well.
Okay.
So that might, just bringing that education to the community is a like there's so just sharing some of those resources, I think getting folks educated on what it is and why it's important is great work.
And Melissa, I know you were talking earlier that you weren't able to attend with Dan Rayfield, and I was there, but you can still, if you Google him, and you can still send him questions, and I'm pretty sure he'll answer. I would look forward to seeing him again. He was very engaging. He didn't really want to talk about himself at all. He talked for just a couple of minutes. He really wanted to take people's questions. So I found that just really refreshing. And they said they would take questions later to be emailed to him.
Can I just quickly follow up, Stephanie, with what you said about the training? How do we get that training?
Let me see, because it's in the so there's a reference to it. I remember seeing it on the, let's see, I think it might be in the community toolkit.
Oh, okay. And is that on ROP's community toolkit?
Oh, it's in the DOJ webs.
Oh, DOJ. Okay.
Yeah, there it is. It's in the community toolkit. So at the very bottom, request a sanctuary promise presentation for your community.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll put that also on the description of this video when it's up on YouTube. So the links to all the stuff, we usually do that. And so if folks want to help arrange something like that, but I think that you kind of really gave the nutshell version of it. And the one thing that the term sanctuary is probably one of those fighting words but it's really much more pragmatic than a philosophical belief about giving sanctuary. Because if they wanted to give true fit sanctuary, they wouldn't ever let them hand them over. Okay. So what this really is a pragmatic government problem that it costs money for our law enforcement to be engaged. When there's no longer a crime under Oregon law that they're enforcing, their job is to let people out of jail, right? So the real battle, and people don't know this, has been about ICE could come to the jail when they're in there, right? And they get released right at the door, and they get released into ICE's hand, within, and theoretically it can be an administrative warrant, right? At that point. But the problem is that ICE never really got there on time. They wanted state and local officials and tax dollars to hold these people just for ICE. They were not offering, to my knowledge, any money for those jurisdictions to do that for them. So the battle is really a little bit more pragmatic than philosophical. Yeah, but and I think it's a good argument to use for some people, right? That, there's more to this. This is just not, a philosophical belief that that we should not get, even hand them over for immigration violations, period. Anyway, does anybody else have a comment or want to ask a question before Stephanie goes on already?
Yeah, some other resources that I pulled to share is an Innovation Law Lab made a toolkit for safeguarding Oregon schools as well. So I know I can speak to my local community in Redmond. Redmond School District and Redmond Police developed a policy about if ICE came to schools, um, what would the response be? So there was a collaboration there, and the school board members who were in support of that, who thankfully pushed pretty hard on that. They were able to have a policy about if ICE were to come to schools, um, they would call, like, the student resource officer would be the one to tell ICE that they could not come on the premises. And I don't have that policy memorized, but sharing the Innovation Law Lab toolkit for any folks that might be concerned about schools being targeted, shared that as well. And then I was wondering, well, before I ask another question, it sounds like there's some organizing around April 13th, city council meeting. And so what's the update there on what the goals are and what's in action?
Well, I think Ruth isn't here to really speak to that, so I don't know exactly, what her idea was. I know that she was just mentioning she wants to bring it up as a city council person, and in order to put it on the agenda, and and it doesn't even necessarily mean that we get to talk about it, right? Except in the general comment section, like is what happened
Okay.
at the prior meeting.
So is there some hope that there'll be, folks in the room to help speak in support of the city have, either a resolution or some kind of statement?
Yes, that is the hopes that happens. And any kind of resolution is probably going to be um gotten from somewhere else.
Well, I'm putting the Hood River. I prepped a lot of links for y'all for tonight. So Hood River was got had a city councilor who really pushed hard for this. So put the link for their the resolutions that they passed, and there's videos that you can watch too if that's helpful. And if you want to get in touch with the folks that local folks that might be able to provide some more resources. Hood River Latino Network, which is one of rural organizing projects um, uh, community centers over in Hood River. They have been very active in their local governance around this. So that's one example that um, might be helpful. I did, Hood River, different community, different geography, but might be some things that could be scaled for Roseburg. Melissa?
Yeah, I was just reading. Can you hear me? I've got a couple multiple tabs open. I was just reading a resolution that a friend sent me from Newport, and it was a resolution making a statement about city concern and opposition to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency's facilities and activities within the city jurisdiction. And it goes on to say, whereas the city of Waldport is a city committed to diversity of culture, et cetera, et cetera. Betsy and I think John, I think I forwarded this to both of you. I don't want to name this person on this podcast, but it's someone I think you both know. I think this resolution out of Waldport is something that we could take to our city council and say, look what they've done in other communities. They're doing it. This is not radical. This has been done in other Oregon communities, and it's something we can replicate here. And that particular counselor, Betsy, that you were talking about, maybe we can get this to her and she can have a look at what they've done in Walport and say, look, we can replicate this, or we can modify it, we can adjust it to however we need to adjust it to fit Roseburg. But it's not radical. It's been done in other Oregon cities, and it's the city council taking a stand against ICE and in support of diversity and our neighbors and our neighbors of color. So, Betsy, I've sent that to you. John, I think I've sent that to you. If not, I will. Um, so anyway, take a look at that. I think I don't have any contacts within Roseburg.
I do.
Well, with
Oh, in
Roseburg
Roseburg. Oh,
City,
sorry. I thought you were going to say
the city of
Walport.
Roseburg, because I live out in the country, so
Gotcha.
I don't
Okay.
have any contacts in the city of Roseburg. But it looked like a really good resolution. It was sent to me by a very, very reliable, wonderful activist. And I think it's a good template for what we might be able to, kind of create here in Roseburg. So I just wanted to add that.
Could you send that to me too, Melissa? I'd like to have that in my.
You bet. Absolutely.
And then, Indivisible Waves is a group in Waldport. So I'm not, they were probably supporters of that, if not helped push for it. So if any connections with the Indivisible Waves folks is helpful, let me know and I can be a bridge there.
Right. Any other questions, discussion? Anything else you want to share, Stephanie?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about flock cameras because is that something that you all are tracking in Roseburg?
There is a small group of people that I have not met, but I edited their petition. So, um, and uh, and so I do know that there are a couple of locations where there's information about the flock, but I wasn't quite sure where they were going with that. But there are people that are monitoring,
Okay.
where the flock cameras are. But
Yeah. So I
um,
put the ACLU turn off flock toolkit in there, and then if any of the folks that you're talking to want to connect with other communities that have been able to get their cities to turn off flock or not, not add it. I don't have the proper language around flock on or flock off, basically. I let me know, and I can connect folks to folks that have already either actively doing organizing around that or have, and they have some um, stories that might be helpful.
Well, I think it's all part of the bigger picture of, what some of us warned us of when the Patriot Act happened. That this is what these things are from, right? This was from the Patriot Act. And and hopefully people will understand that this issue of flock is more important than the superficial idea of saving a child or two. Or, that's the argument I hear in support of it, that, some kid that's been kidnapped, has been caught with it. I cannot say that I have any knowledge of that being factual. I have not investigated that. But the bigger problem, or even this whole nonsense about undocumented workers, we have a problem of not understanding anything. As I commented somewhere else today, I think there's a lot of adults here that need some civics lessons. And that's part of the problem. I mean, they don't have a real deep understanding of any policy. So it's so easy to get rhetoric. And so I'm glad that you're here to kind of talk about that. And ROP is around to help, people learn about these things in more detail. And right now is probably more critical than any other time to support such groups, people who are doing that kind of work. Um, so it's great because people like me don't have to do as much work. And people like Melissa and John don't have to do as much work when somebody else does it. That's why I kind of hesitated about stealing it, but I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
We don't have time to reinvent too many wheels. So anyway, so anybody else have any comments about the immigration stuff, what's going on and what we're going to do? Anybody have any ideas of what we need to do besides what we've already discussed?
Yeah, I have a question following up from last week. If Stephanie had any ideas about it, we were wondering if, how we could research if ICE is actually looking at any property around here to rent. Have you encountered any research on that about how to stay in touch on rental transactions and things like that?
I've got some calls scheduled this coming week that hopefully I'll be able to provide some more information on that. The most recent advice that I got from reaching out to folks who were part of the Coastal Coalition, that when they were looking at placing a processing center, ICE processing center in Newport, they're on the RFI that was put out. There were some names of people who were involved in at the government level in that RFI. And so their advice was to reach out to those people who were named in the actual RFI to ask. I don't know if they'll give you the information, but so that was some advice that I got. And then as I connect with other folks this week, if I learn more about that, because that was one of my questions too. How would we know what, like, if any vendors submitted a request and what they're looking at? So that's the best I got so far as far as advice.
Yeah, well, I know that they knew some of the places that were being available over there, and I was just wondering, how they found that out. So
I think Tina has some information about that.
Oh, actually, my information was more regarding what we were previously talking about with organizing in small groups. And I just wanted to mention that if you go to ROP's website, there's also a thing on organizing thermometer. And that's really helped me as far as going and finding places that are safe and saving time with collecting kind of information on, where folks are safe around here. So I could just use the organizing thermometer with if they're just a complete ally or if there's somebody we should just not approach right now and poke the bear. So I just wanted to mention that that has been really helpful.
Can you talk a little bit? I'm sorry to jump in. Can you talk a little bit more about what you've been doing? You've been going to local businesses and handing out packets, right?
Yeah, so there's been several groups. So I'm not like there's several groups of us doing things, but we have a packet that is available from a law person, and basically we're going to different businesses and offering them a flyer to put in their front window that says no trespassing. If ICE was to come here, we don't allow you in here. And we do acknowledge to them that that doesn't mean that they won't push their way through, but it might give you a legal case or and it will show people who are able to just shop there and feel safe there. And I think that's really important for the community to know is where we're spending our money and who we're supporting amongst us. It's not to call people out. It's more of a where are we safe here?
Have you been very successful getting people to do businesses to do that?
Yes. Yes, we've been to over 30 businesses, and the ones that do have folks that may be targeted there, we give them a packet of what a fake warrant looks like, what a real warrant looks like, what your rights are. And a lot of places, it was the employees that really needed the help, and they were surrounded by folks. They were like, please let us know what our neighbors are saying. Please let us know because we have people here. And so, yeah, it's been very successful. It's been very tedious, but there's been a lot of folks, and I think in the end we'll have solid support.
Good deal.
Thanks for doing that outreach.
Yeah. So anybody else have anything they want to chime in on?
Have you had any luck with McDonald's? Because have you approached them?
We haven't we've been trying to focus on local right now because these are people that mainly have people that own the place that can do something about it here and it affects them. But we're branching out a little bit because there's several places, dispensaries and such that have, several places elsewhere. But no, we haven't hit like Walmart and McDonald's, and because that would be sometimes businesses like that, it's based per employee and they like to keep politics out of the workplace just because of the political climate we're living in right now.
In the past, I've noticed, especially in Sutherland, a large contingent of Hispanic people eating there. So I'm just, I think that would be a good place for ICE to hit,
Yes, definitely. And there's folks that I have stacks of red cards that are bilingual and are available also in other languages. And I suggest, folks can get a hold of me, but you get those red cards and you leave them places that people might need them, or leave little packets like we have in places people might be able to get them. Even make zines with information that you don't have to alert the entire area.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So Tina, you've been making some really important connections. Is it okay if I share that and then you can fill in the blanks?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Stephanie.
So, so the how like ICE organizing looks in other counties is there's a regional lead organization, usually supported through Oregon for All coalition. And so there's Douglas County, like the closest regional leads are going to be like there's Rogue Valley Migra Watch in Grants Pass. There's Coalition Fortaleza in Jackson County, and then there's Rapid Response Lane County and other like Lane County Immigrant Defense, different coalitions. So and one of the things that I've heard from folks in Roseburg is as soon as PERC, which stands for Portland Immigrant oh my goodness, Response Coalition. Oh my goodness. I just say PERC. I should know what it means. But PERC is who does the ICE verification, rapid response, legal observer training. But those virtual trainings fill up as soon as they get posted. So I've been hearing some of that frustration. Thank you, Immigrant Rights Coalition. And so thanks to Tina going to Lane County, I've now been hearing from people in Lane County being like, we've heard support is needed. So it sounds like the wheels are turning for having an in-person perk supported training in Roseburg. So that's now a conversation that's moving. And then also myself and folks from Oregon for All and PERC met with Mono Amiga last weekend. And so getting them connected and resourced with the Oregon for All Coalition as well. So where, they that goes is, kind of up to those orgs, but so building some local power, and with Mono Amiga being an immigrant-led group, helping them like whatever support that they need to hold that. So more support is on its way. And then Tina, I don't know if you want to fill in anything from your conversations.
Yeah, so when I did go up there to Lane County, yes, they are very concerned because it will affect them. I've done work with the jail support and the detention centers up there and their security teams, and honestly, they're willing to jump in and help. This will really affect them. So I think this will help get local folks more interested in helping. I co-direct Umpqua Valley Pride, but through that, I do what's called Rainbow Beret Front, which it's kind of like if you know Eugene Pride, they have Rainbow Guard. Well, Rainbow Beret Front, we're going to be meeting every Tuesday, starting this Tuesday at 6 o'clock. And you can email rainbowberetfront@gmail.com for the location. But not only are we covering like prides that we're going to be doing, but also what we can do locally for rapid response, because we're trained so well in security for one time a year. And I think we can integrate that into a local system.
Good deal. Anybody else?
I was just going to add that there's a great group in Cottage Grove Friends of Democracy, and Cottage Grove basically straddles the line between Lane and Douglas County. That might be a resource for us. They're very progressive, they're very active, and that might be something that we can partner with them too, because obviously they've had ICE raids. They've had people taken from their community, ripped from their homes and cars, and Cottage Grove has seen ICE activity. So Cottage Grove Friends of Democracy might be a group that we might want to partner with.
They are eager to be connected with you. So I've been talking with them. That's awesome. I'm glad you found them.
Well, and this discussion reminds me of something that I put on the back burner, which is, more than a year ago, I threw out there making this statewide connection with everybody who knows how to do everything. Because the reality is that's going to be needed more than ever. There's a lot of people in the state that have a tremendous amount of skill sets. They may have never done it for a living, but they did it for their life. And there's people that take on every issue that, is of a more progressive human and planet-oriented nature throughout the state, that I actually got connected with in my isolation of Douglas County for decades when Bernie Sanders ran for president, and the coalitions that came out of that and the people that came in, to have a more progressive. So Oregon actually lives up to its progressive reputation, which it is not. I mean, it's a good thing there's the sanctuary law and the Sanctuary Promise Act. And I think it's a good tool to just point out hypocrisy if that exists, and have a thing to go, hey, this is what the law says. And I say that notwithstanding, Zach's, gonna give an opinion about the bigger picture, but the reality is the one way that I've seen problems with the government be pushed back on and be successful is not usually at the ballot box, but it's in the courtroom. And that is using the laws that exist, that are in the books now, the reality of the here and now, and being able to use what they produce, not what we have an opinion about. And it's an easier argument to make, even if not a moral argument to make. And so it's good to have any of these tools that you can look at a law and say, aha, you're not following this law. There's only so much stumbling they can do before they usually acquiesce, particularly if you're going to sue them. But anyway, so do we have anybody else want to say something? On the subject? No? So if you haven't seen the change.org petition and you haven't signed it, please do. It actually is a whole lot. Normally I put petitions out there that don't do very well. But then again, I don't pursue it. But I think that this is an issue that, and it's at a different time, right? What you see now is more and more, and people may not think this is, right, but there's a lot of things to be thankful for Trump. And we wouldn't be organizing. We would be, if it weren't for Trump, we wouldn't be organizing the way that we are, period. And you may think, well, that's, sometimes it is this horror, shit show that makes people actually do something. That's my experience anyway. The perceived self-interest. Saul Alinsky is probably the most famous organizer attributed to that statement, but people don't move except in their own perceived self-interest, and that's what we have now. We have a self-interest every damn day coming down the road. Speaking of which, tomorrow night we're going to be kicking off the first public meeting of the People's Homeless Commission in Douglas County. It's our counter to the Roseburg Homeless Commission that has really basically done nothing, and things have just gotten worse. So we will be meeting the first and third Mondays of the month, and they were planned to be alternate Mondays, alternate weeks of the city council. So if we're going to take stuff to the city council, that we can do that. But it is trying to bring together everybody who knows everything about housing and homelessness in Douglas County, and particularly advocates who've been working on this stuff for decades to try to put public policy, because that's the main problem. Our public policies suck. They're very punitive. They are not about helping anyone. And they don't even help the people who want them. I mean, the people who complain about homeless people, like in Roseburg, they're not going away. It's only gotten worse, so, and we don't have the money to jail them. And if we did, why don't we just house them? But we hope that trying to bring people in to have a dialogue about these things and having people understand the reality of what homelessness is and what it takes to end it, maybe they won't be so angry, maybe they will, start thinking about the fact that somebody's going to have to pay for no matter what we do, because this is not going to be solved by anybody but the government, our government. Yeah, Melissa.
Is that meeting in person or Zoom?
It's in person. We will do Zoom if we can. So if you want a Zoom link, I can, once I'm in there in the buyer center, I will know, what I'm going to be able to do in the meeting room to have it Zoom. We will then, if it's not tomorrow night, it will be eventually. In 2 weeks, we're going to have folks involved with Hastings Village, which is the only government sanctioned homeless camp in Douglas County from the city of Sutherland. So the folks are going to kind of review, I think it's 4 years maybe that it's still in existence. And it certainly isn't a model for success, but it's a model to look at and kind of analyze. And so that's kind of the theme of all of these meetings will be. And then we're going to have public health issues. What's the public health consequences of homelessness and 300 people living on the banks of the South Umpqua River? And the policies I'm assuming that we will come up with will not just be applicable to Roseburg, but any city and even a county, because it's a way, there's these bigger issues we have to address. Or have a say so in how they get addressed, not that we can fix them with a magic wand. So, anybody have any comments? Anything else they want to bring up?
Anything about anything?
That's right. Yes, anything.
Well,
Well, I don't know. You could talk to him, maybe not, but give it a shot.
I will just say that we are coming up on the May primaries, and we have some good candidates for county commission, and I hope that groups that I'm involved in, that we will really work hard to get out the vote and tell people to treat this primary like a general election, because 50% and it's game over. And I don't think most people know that. I didn't know that for years that I lived here, that if you got 50%, it was like you're for a county commissioner, sheriff, or whatever, that there was no general election. And who votes in the primary? Very few people. So I just want to remind folks that I think the next, month, a big part of that should be devoted to get out the vote, especially for our great county commission candidates that we have. And I think some of our county commissioners, boys, are running scared and a little bit angry. Well, they're always angry, but I just really hope that people can understand that these people have had their turn, right? They've been in office for years. And is Douglas County thriving? No, we are not thriving. We are hemorrhaging businesses. We are in housing crisis, which is not unique to Douglas County, but our county commissioners are not doing things to benefit our community. And they've had their chance. They've had their chance repeatedly, and it's time for new leadership. And we have some great county commission candidates, and I think that any organization listening right now who's a progressive or who really cares about the future of Douglas County should be very invested in the county commissioner race. And absolutely right now, we should be laser focused on getting out the vote for the primary and getting out the vote for our candidates for the county commission. And now I will shut up.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that people might have figured out if they pay attention to reason. We've had we've interviewed Andrew Rosales, actually all the four the initial four that started running. And the last one was Shane Kelly, which had a couple weeks ago. Lori Wick we had on, and we had on Nick Mitchell. And Lori and Nick are running against each other, against Tom Kress. But they're not running against each other. They're just running in the same race, and and no, they're not spoilers, and I'm not going to go into that lecture. But but the reality is it's 50% plus one vote. Okay, that's what it is. And that is a sad reality that that's been our recent history of the last couple of elections for county commissioner. It has been that way. So it is decided in the May primary. And so it is important, and it is so critical if you want to have control and the say in government. The more local you are active, the better that you have the ability to influence it, period. And so county commission, there's a lot of stuff, and particularly with community rights, the whole idea, the concept of community rights and what we've been talking about regarding the comments, the Southern Oregon Progressive Election showed us last Friday was about land use and planning and development, and who's going to control it and for what purpose and whose benefit. Those are the kind of fundamental questions that we're in an area of upheaval, and all this shit may be moot. We're in a time of upheaval, and the reality is this could go really badly. But if it doesn't, it is the prime opportunity to create a world that benefits a heck of a lot more people. And so I think there's those activism. That's why we're doing like the People's Homeless Commission and the citizens assemblies. And I think that, and we've been talking about the home rule charter, right? And we're not going to do that in the middle of the election, but that's something that we can do. And hopefully attract nonpartisan voters, because that's what I'm going to say. It's a real tough is to get those people who, the non-affiliated voters who do not, vote in great numbers, although they have a significant number. They're the most numbers of registrants in the state of Oregon, and the second most in Douglas County. And Republican, they're not too far away from the Republican registration. So it really matters. Yeah, Melissa.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's really important to stress that when we talk to folks about the state of the county and we ask them honestly, how do you view the state of the county? Do you think we're progressing or are we regressing? I see businesses fleeing. There's a lot of issues. There's a lot of challenges. And the people that are in the county commissioner offices right now have been there for a while. And nothing has gotten better under their quote unquote stewardship. It's just gotten worse. So I would say to non-affiliated voters, we've given them a chance. They've had years to prove whether or not they could do something that's actually going to be beneficial to the county and not just to private interests or wealthy interests, but to the county, to the constituents who elected them. And I personally do not see how they have succeeded at all. I see them as utter failures. And it is not, absolutely is not really a partisan issue. It's a reality issue. It's a reality of where Douglas County is and where we want it to be. And doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity. So I don't know that that's the pitch to make to non-affiliated voters, but I think the pitch is they've had their chance. We've given them several terms. And do you think Douglas County is better off now than it was when they were elected? And I think a fair share of our residents would say, no, we're not better off. I don't see Douglas County as being a thriving county in Oregon. I don't see Douglas County as being on the rise. So that would be my pitch to non-affiliated voters is it doesn't matter. Party is irrelevant at this point. It's about competency. And that would be my pitch.
Anybody else?
What would this better vision of Douglas County be? Because if we are pitching candidates on grounds of them not being the current officials, that they're simply more competent, what does that actually present as an alternative vision for the people of Douglas County.
Well, for one thing, it means allowing public comment at county commission meetings. I mean, isn't that a basic tenet of governance, allowing public comment? And
No,
they've stripped that away. Why are they so afraid to hear from their constituents?
I think if your vision of a better future for Douglas County is centered on this notion of public comment alone, public comment which where it does exist does not have much teeth. Don't think that that's going to be convincing enough.
Not on its own, no. Well, what do you see, Zach? How do you envision it?
I would want to see. I think what lies in the potential of Douglas County, and what I think many folks in Douglas County like to think Douglas County is or was. That is a neighborly community. That is a community that is grounded in highly mutualistic ties, where our public institutions are managed by the public directly. Um, so to the extent that an election factors into that, I would say, if anything, a minor reforms such as changing an official while effectively maintaining the same structure of things, very minimally might move us in the direction of that kind of reorganization of society on the whole. But that's what I would also say, uh, rather than only telling people to vote, tell people also about the People's Homeless Commission. Because that's the kind of organizing that will bring about, that does have the greater potential to bring about that kind of real mutualistic society in Douglas County that is that can step beyond um, relations that are based upon calculation and money and debts, and are grounded in holistic principles of diversity, of the unity of the community, of health and well-being, not just of the human inhabitants of Douglas County, but also of our eco community, our forests, our rivers, and such, that also in turn help keep us alive. Because we're facing collapse on a global level of of not just ecology, but of human community. Um, that should always be in our vision when we're talking about candidates for office, when we're talking about new political forms like a popular assembly, like the People's Homeless Commission, or even something advisory like the so-called citizens assemblies, um, anything of that sort. If we are not centering a new vision of society in our discussions about these, then we're not moving in that direction.
And do you find these candidates to be lacking in that way? Because I know who won't be talking about those issues, those uh, commissions and parties is the incumbents. I mean, they're not going to talk about the things that you and I value and are invested in. The incumbents see that as a threat to the status quo of, especially from their big dollar donors and big timber. I don't, so I don't, I mean, do you have a problem with the candidates who are running, or is it just you want more?
Well, it's two things. One is the candidates who are running are they don't have platforms necessarily. their programs are centered on them not being the incumbents, which is fair. That's very fair.
That has a value, Zach. I
Yeah.
mean, come on. In
Uh,
Douglas
sure.
County, it's like anybody but, if that could win.
But on the other side of things, is that putting forward something transformationally different, or a change, like a change of state from from a solid to a gas. I mean, we're trying
I
like
think it
we
I
need
think it
like
provides an
upgrade at this
opportunity.
point.
It provides the opportunity, that door open for change. Will they be the change agents? Not necessarily. I mean, but they do open the door for citizens' assemblies, right? We've had that discussion with them, right? Having that kind of form of government, because if you want transparency, you want input from the people, we have to change the way we do business. They get that, in the conversations I've had. And actually, we're going to do the next every 2 weeks. So there's three more that we're going to be doing for SOPP on Fridays. Is the next one is about accountability, transparency, and the formation of government. How it can be restructured, because there is a movement starting to grow here to do another home rule charter to actually push for, and then that becomes that transformational mechanism, right? If that can happen. And one thing with the transformation of people as county commissioners is we could have them refer, we talked about this in the county charter stuff, the problem of having the county commissioners be the ones who assemble or convene and appoint the home rule charter committee, right? We're not going to get the kind of stuff that we don't believe we would. So if there were people in there that would appoint people more objectively, right, and it would be more likely to be something that we could do instead of having to do it just as a people's ballot measure.
Mhm. But that can't always be clear when there is no platform put forward, when a candidate is not
That's a good point.
grounded in popular organizations, not, like an electoral party, for example, but popular organizations. And I don't want to make this such an individual problem. This is beyond the character of any individual person who runs for office. Something that I noted a few sessions ago when we were talking a bit about the Roseburg City Council. Similarly, which was especially revealed by the Fir Grove Park vote not so long ago. There were counselors who even I thought might be swayed to reconsider moving forward with the project on the basis of, well, ecology for one thing, and the ecological health of our community, on lack of the lack of consideration of particular factors, from the fencing to the quality of material, to where the information about this project is even coming from. Are we just being given material from the company, information from the company that's trying to sell us something? And ultimately, I thought perhaps some of the more um, professedly open-minded or progressive folks on the council, and of course, some people did vote against the movement. Uh, I thought that at the end of the day, the problem of a lack of communication, even participation aside, lack of communication with the broader public of the city, would raise alarms and lead to a vote to, at the very least, pause moves forward with such a project. that didn't matter. Any kind of um, of principle on those grounds did not did not really factor into a final decision. The final decisions that were made on moving that project forward were on grounds of basically preserving the community as is. We need investment in the community is the line that was given. We need that translates to we need outside capital to be invested in our cities. So we need the infrastructure we need to capitulate to a company that wants to build this or that thing in the city, which ultimately leaves room for further extraction of the wealth of the people of this city. I don't just mean like the wealth as in monetary wealth held by the rich, but like the general welfare of the community. Uh, but that's done on ground that kind of decision making, that decision to move forward with such a project, as an example, does not have to do exactly with the character of any one individual official, a government
Right.
official, a counselor, or it could be a county commissioner who makes such a decision, because they're in a mediating position. They have to capitulate to market forces, if you will, because we are at the mercy of them in any small community or even a larger community, as cities as big as Los Angeles or New York. We are part of a much bigger global market that we don't always have direct control over in the immediate sphere of things when our civic institutions are so weak because they are not popular, because they are not grounded in, you could call it the people's will, but really popular participation. When we have a largely non-political population in not just Douglas County, but most of the United States. And
Yeah, that's true.
that severely, severely weakens us
Of course.
in the way of being able to actually resist, to contest moves of a local politician to welcome in, even reluctantly, new forms of extraction, new forms of dependency that we become latched to. Those are not fought off by merely electing somebody new into office. That is a much bigger disaster that we have to face. And that's why
That's true.
that's why I will say, like, the People's Homeless Commission can function as the beginnings of that building of real popular politics, like popular politics that builds new form of, we could call it mutual aid, mutual assistance, new forms of intercommunity ties between neighbors so that we rely on each other. Or, well, we do rely on each other, but that we know we rely on each other, so that we can properly wage a battle against forces from outside the community, whether they be investors or paramilitaries or not. Because without those ties, without that responsibility to one another, we have nothing. We have nothing. So again, just voting for another candidate, and especially candidates that don't have platforms, but just present themselves as being alternatives to the status quo. In what way? Maybe they're open to something having to do with public comment, maybe. We have to understand that even those people can still be susceptible, and very likely will be susceptible, to decisions that their predecessors would also have made, that are not in the favor of the sustainability of the community, but are presented as, maintaining the status quo, maintaining the possibility for life in the immediate. but that ultimately will erode the basic conditions for life in Douglas County.
You're right. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge that you have to face. I think, I mean, it's a world that's going to be yours if it exists at all, more so than it is, it's my future is only in my, posterity. Um, and so I think, and I'm not, I'm laughing at it, but the reality is I think that some of that has to be, and the way we're currently structured, like any revolution, even that, overthrow of the all the elected official, that would be a major win. It might even motivate some of that participation. But Melissa has her hand up, but I want to ask the question that Stephanie asked a while ago about in the chat about what would be the number one issue that would that get NAVs to vote for county commissioner? Anybody has, any kind of other than they hate the county commissioners.
Yeah.
But that's probably going to drive many of them not to vote. Jobs. Do anybody else?
Power bills.
Power bills.
Yeah, power bills generally, utilities in general, is serious, especially with the threats of new data centers being built in new parts of Oregon. Uh, uh, the moves of companies like Amazon into parts of like Lane County, like Douglas County is certainly susceptible to that. And we are ultimately at the mercy of jacked up utility bills, which is a problem of monopolies. That's a problem of a lack of basic utilities that are controlled by the public.
I'd like to interject that Pacific Power is hanging by a thread. They are on the verge of filing bankruptcy, and we are paying the bills as citizens for them being sued for the fires created by the timber industry. Also, if you haven't gone on the tribal website, you need to go on there and read about their data centers. I have posted about it, and people are saying, where are you getting this information? It's right on their website. They had a data center in the Umpqua Business Center when I had my offices there. They had a server farm in the basement. They are working on phase 3 of a huge data center supplying power to the south part of the county. They have a cellular tower system. And if you guys aren't paying attention to what the tribe's doing, you really need to. And it's right there. They're very open about it. And that's all I have to say about it. Oh, I also want to say that I think that the state could take over Pacific Power and turn it into a public utilities commission. It's been done before. We have them. And I think Washington bought out a big chunk of Pacific Power recently. So it's breaking down. And that's just something I know that people can't afford the damn power bill. And you don't know how it's calculated anymore with the smart meters. They have different fluctuations for different hours of the day. I don't know how mine went from $200 a month to $400 a month. And I'm one person in one house that hasn't changed anything.
Melissa, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to go back to talk about some of the things that Zach talked about. First, I want to say, Zach, I appreciate you and admire you greatly. But I disagree with you on certain things. You say they have no platform. I disagree with that. I've met these candidates. I've talked with them at length. I feel like they do have platforms. I also feel like we cannot be in the business of letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. And any shift to the left is positive. if we get a county commissioner who will listen to the I'm sorry, Betsy, Homeless People's Commission, I can't remember the name.
Homeless Commission.
People's Homeless Commission. If we get a county commissioner who would endorse that, who would embrace that, that is a net gain. And we live in reality, and Douglas County is it is a very red county. And I think we need to stop criticizing the people running against the incumbents and start looking at the incumbents and saying, what the fuck, pardon my language, have they done for us? And instead of fantasizing about some perfect world where we all have these home charter rules and everything else, we need to be realistic about Douglas County today. And I see these candidates as being viable options to the horrible, absolutely horrible county commissioners that we have today. We cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I like I said, I totally disagree. I think they do have platforms, and part of that platform is absolutely being the opposite of the incumbent, and that's legitimate. And they may not be everything that you want in a candidate, but they are so much better than what we currently have. And this is what I find so infuriating about the left, is we get into these purity tests about who's good enough. And I see these kind of commissioners these are humble people who are trying to make change, positive change in our community. Andrew Rosales, 21-year military veteran, trying to make positive change in our community. We don't shoot that person down. We build that person up. That person, you may not agree with everything, but he is absolutely dedicated to making Douglas County a better, more economically vibrant, more diverse community. And it infuriates me when we get into these purity tests. And that's what I feel like we are doing right now. And I think that serves nothing except the incumbents. It serves the incumbents because it tears us apart. It tears us down. I'm losing my train of thought, but we have to deal in reality with the people that we have. And we have good, solid candidates who will move the county to the left. It may not move far enough for you. It may not move fast enough for you, but it will move. And God knows we need it to move.
I'm going to put my 3 cents in here. And for one, I think sometimes there needs to be purity test, and we can actually go through a list of them if you want. But you're looking at this on the short term. And I agree with Zach. You have to also look at the long term. What do you want to do with society if you get there? I would not be in the Democratic Party and helping these candidates and recruiting these candidates if I also did not understand the pragmatic reality of the world we live in. So do not assume that because somebody wants something way better than the shit show we have. And it was actually that mentality criticizing those on the left who really want a better world that got us a whole bunch of neoliberals in the Democratic Party who are the cause of Trump being in the White House.
I'm not saying vote blue. I'm not saying vote blue no matter who. I'm saying
right. Well, that's
Douglas,
good. That's just
kind of
yeah,
are.
yeah. I agree.
Look at Douglas County and
You
look at the alternative.
Yeah. I'm just saying that I think you can have it both ways. I mean, I think that you can live in the practical reality of where you are right now, but if you don't have a vision for something better, don't bother.
Then why have you been showcasing these candidates on your platform if you don't believe
Because
in them?
I think it's not that I don't believe in them. I believe in them. I think they are a good set of candidates, where we are in the time that we are. But, none of them except, maybe one is a leftist. I'm a leftist. I think there's some fundamental, and Kevin Bell is as well. We have tried not to shy away from who we are and what we're promoting. We believe that leftism is actually is a populist message.
Yeah,
And
you
so
think
that is,
pragmatically that's going to be a win, going with as far left as we can. I'm trying to get in somebody who's
Huh.
less bad, and maybe that's my screw up on my part, because I see these
well,
incumbents as
we have what
terrible.
we have. We have what we have. That's how pragmatic I am. We have what we have, so we work with what we have. But yes, I mean, in a perfect world, if I would have chosen my world when I was Zach's age, yeah, we would have universal health care. Everyone would be housed. Okay. I mean, no, it's not, of course, because it's really only the left who has promoted policies and positions that actually got us there. I'm not even going to go into the shit show of the Democratic Party on housing policy, but one of these days, believe me, we will have a whole show devoted to it. So we're going to move on. I'll let Zach make one parting comment on this topic. And
Well, so Melissa, I had to specify earlier that this is not, I'm not making an individualistic argument against these candidates. Like, this is beyond individual gripes with particular candidates. And to the extent that you think I am, you are making up your own fight. Because did I say anything about voting against or not voting for any of these candidates? Nope. I also think, in agreement with Betsy here, not having a broader vision for where you're going is like trying to drive a car by just staring at the speedometer. You're gonna crash if you aren't looking ahead and looking forward and having a destination in mind. Because if you are trying to transform transform politics or unseat a politician and you don't know what you're actually replacing that system or particular politician with, you're going to end up in trouble. I also take great issue with your insistence that candidates who are not the incumbents, who are running against incumbents, your insistence that they should not be criticized. I find that totalitarian in its tendency. Not questioning, not criticizing, especially constructively,
That's
which is
fair.
my goal here.
That's fair.
I wouldn't criticize somebody in that way if I didn't care about their success.
Yeah.
Not questioning and not criticizing, that is what totalitarians do.
That's
That's what they insist. And I have to say, I think it's worth actually having a later session where we talk about the history of liberalism, because
yeah.
that is a tendency in liberalism itself. In John Stuart Mill, for example, probably one of the most famous classical liberals, has a very famous portion in a text called On Liberty, which is still hailed by not just liberals, but by certain people who uh, profess to be leftists,
Yeah.
will ride on. It's of course it's the whole text is on the idea of minorities, political minorities, being allowed to participate in political discourse because they might be right and a majority might be completely wrong.
Right.
Time show well, over time they'll be shown to be correct potentially, something like that. But John Stuart Mill specifies in I think chapter 1 to my memory that and this is a pretty short text that if people are not willing to participate in discourse in the correct way, they should be ruled with an iron fist. They should be ruled by a despot, an enlightened despot, who will shape them into the proper civilized people, right? We can't have these heathens in India criticizing the British Empire.
Yeah.
They can't be they can't be uh 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 launching these criticisms and following through in political action. They can't be doing these systemic criticisms of British rule. No, can't criticize a system. So we have to rule them with an iron fist. That's liberalism. That is,
This is why you take me to school every time, Zach. You teach me something every time. And I am so grateful to have you here because you teach me something every time. Thank you. And I'm sorry for how I came across earlier.
well, I I have to I'm
We're not liberal, so we're not going to be totalitarian. You're more than welcome to speak, but also be prepared to get
Yeah.
pushback. Okay,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
don't get butt hurt.
Yes.
You know, don't
Yes.
be Chris Boyce. You know,
Yes.
Stephanie wanted to say something.
okay.
No, I juicy conversation. I wish I had every Sunday to hang out with y'all. I wanted to like I'm guessing that nabs are probably the biggest voting block. Um,
Second
Second,
here.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
So I want to just, I mean, what Catherine shared, in terms of like, folks who are knocking doors. I mean, whether the folks, like, no matter what the results of the election are, these are opportunities when you're knocking on doors to ask folks like, what do you care about? What are, the issues that like let's, so just want to throw that out there. I think again, the power bill issue, like that Catherine shared, is super powerful, and hearing those stories at the door from folks is going to be something that bring that back to the folks that you want to get elected. So they have those issues, and they're telling those stories, and they're bringing that, like this is what the people care about. So I wanted to just make sure that I was compelled by what Catherine shared. So
Yes.
thinking about, like what do you care about? What, just an opportunity to hear that at the doors.
You know, and certainly for, the county, and because it is a countywide problem. Not that the people who live in the cities have any less power bills, but I think it's probably something that you don't really, uh, that it's an interesting that would be a unifying point, but it's all part of that economic pressure, right? These bills are going up, and I think that's a really good point. I do know that the four county commissioners, they've been having these town hall, the candidates and that have been going around have been having these town halls. And so some of the efforts of the podcast is to address those things that they didn't get to in the meetings. The one real flaw of them even winning and fantasizing about whether, it would change Douglas County or not, if they don't have enough name recognition, it's not going to matter. It's going to do one of two things. People won't vote for them, or people won't vote for them because they don't vote at all. And particularly NAVs, because as we all know, NAVs don't get every name on the ballot, right? They don't get Democrats or Republicans running for the partisan seats. And so there's even people are putting out there, even on like the next door site here today, that they wouldn't get a ballot if you're not affiliated voter. And that's just not factually true. But a lot of people have that misconception. And county commissioners are nonpartisan, and it's really critical that people vote in that race. And it's also really critical that they get volunteers, so people want them elected. They need people making phone calls, if not door knocking. And door knocking is the way, really. I don't care how much things have changed. The best way to get a candidate elected is go door to door and talk to the person in person about their issue. That has not changed in the 50 some years I've been doing this. So technology changes, and it doesn't necessarily make up for technology doesn't make up for the fact that that doesn't happen. So any other comments or all right.
Yeah, are you about over or what?
Yeah, whatever
Well,
you
I
want.
just wanted to say, Stephanie's here. We have a chance to have her here in mid-May. We're talking about, and we just haven't decided on a topic yet. Been going back and forth. Community Rights is Douglas County is having a Zoom meeting on Thursday. Hopefully, Stephanie can join us, and we can maybe resolve what we want to, what issue she can, help, have another workshop to help us discuss it. It might be something, ice related, but anyway.
Is that it's at 6:30, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I can there's a very important Deschutes Dems meeting that I'm in to be at, but that which starts at 7, so I could like maybe join if it's okay if I just join for the first part.
Sure. Yeah.
Helpful. Yeah, I can jump
Yeah.
on the first
Yeah.
part.
John, I met with Stephanie earlier, and I have a lot to relay to you, so we can have a call either tonight or tomorrow. I'll fill you in.
Okay, good. Okay. I just would like to say regarding like the commissioner election, it would do very little good just if we had one new candidate elected, because they would be outnumbered 2-1, and history would show that they would basically get shoved aside. We saw kind of what happened that with Gary Leaf, who was anything but radical. So it's not a matter of getting one elected. You have to get two elected, because they're going to get and this goes back before these guys were in office too. I mean, I've heard stories about Doug Robertson and and Joyce Morgan just basically it didn't matter who else the other commissioner was, because they had everything decided, and the third commissioner was was just window dressing. So, and I mean, these guys ran the county. Boyce and Freeman ran the county by themselves for over 6 or 8 months, and made it pretty clear that they were doing just fine. They didn't need a third candidate, a third commissioner. And when they finally got the third commissioner in, they made damn sure it was the one they wanted. So anyway, that's kind of a little bit of a that's not very optimistic, but it's true. So, and that's why what?
Go ahead. Sorry. Go
And
ahead.
that's why if you have more commissioners, you have a better chance. You got it that you have a little bit better chance of just you aren't going to be controlled by two. So.
Yeah, and the commissioner that you mentioned, Joyce Morgan, right? You do remember that she started out as a Democrat and became a Republican
Yes.
before she was dethroned by another Republican, right?
Right. So,
but and then they had Joe Lawrence, who was theoretically a registered Democrat, but I didn't find Joe Lawrence to be very progressive. So,
well, did he even do anything in office?
I'm not sure. Yeah, and that was probably just as well. So, all right. So, are we done?
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
And so it sounds like maybe there's like a call for folks to show up at City Council on the 13th.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
All right. So,
Thank
you very much. And what?
I just have the one thing to say about NAV, non-affiliated voters. The other term is not active voters. They throw their ballot in the trash. You have to give them a reason to not throw the ballot in the trash. They think they don't know enough. If you give them a reason to mark that ballot, that is the driving force. Otherwise, they're just going to toss it away. So remember that. It's not non-affiliated voters. It's not active voters.
Very good point, Kat. All right, so next week we'll have something, and that's kind of the way my life goes. We'll figure that out. So thank you for being here. And I forgot at the beginning to have you introduce yourselves. John Hunter, Zach Whitworth, they're here every week pretty much. And so thank you very much. And John is the head of the local community rights, Douglas County, which is why that says that on his thing. And Whitworth is the head of Zach Whitworth, right? So it says it on your
Historian, University of Oregon student, all that jazz. Yeah,
Thank you for
happy
being
to
here,
be
all of you.
Thank
All
you.
right. See you next time.
Okay.
Stay strong, folks.